today's Gospel, we read the story of the prodigal son, probably one of the more well-known parts of the New Testament. This is a story that really is about all of us. We are all the prodigal son. We have all walked away from God, and we all have that daily struggle of walking away from God through sin and then needing to run back to the Father and receiving His open embrace of mercy and love. At another level, this is also a story about the divided kingdoms of Palestine, the northern kingdoms of Israel and the southern kingdoms of Judah. They are divided after the time of King Solomon, and then the northern kingdoms are taken into exile by the Assyrians. While they are in exile, they begin to worship pagan gods, and the prophets really decry this idolatry and evil that has overtaken this kingdom. They are like the prodigal son. But then through the mercy and love of Christ, these two brothers who are like divided family are then reunited. There's something really powerful, I think, at the heart of the story, which actually happens at the very end of the tale. And it starts before that, though, with the prodigal son, who, first of all, he asks for his inheritance before his father is dead. And in the Jewish culture of the day, that was an absolute insult. This was something very degrading to happen in a family, yet that's what he does. And to make matters worse, he then takes the inheritance and he squanders and wastes all of it doing sinful things. And then if that wasn't enough, he goes for strike three. And he finds himself in such dire desperation that he actually starts working with pigs. And for the Jewish people, the pigs were a filthy, unclean animal. So this is like adding depravity on top of depravity. It was just one big mess. It really highlights how far from the family and how far from the truth this son had wandered. But then what happens? Every day the father goes out to the gate to wait for him, which is a profound act of love in and of itself. But the bit that really gets me every time I hear the story is when the prodigal son finally returns home, and when he is a long way off, the father goes running out to embrace him. And to me, I always hear that part of the story, and I am reminded of the deep and profound mercy and love that God the Father has for each and every one of us. He doesn't just wait at the gate, which would be amazing enough. He comes running to us to embrace us with arms of mercy and love. So today the challenge, I think, is for us to reflect on our own lives and ask, in what ways are we being like the prodigal son today, and in what ways can we return to that loving embrace? And perhaps it's also worth asking, in what ways are we being like that older brother who is jealous and envious of the Father's love and mercy for those who are in desperate need of it? Today's saint quote of the day comes from Saint Augustine, and he said this: "Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you." He's talking, of course, about God. And in many ways, Saint Augustine in his life really does typify that of the prodigal son. He is someone who lives in hedonistic excess and then comes to a conversion later in life in a very, very powerful way. In this passage, Saint Augustine goes on to talk about the fact that he was trying to find God that whole time, but he was looking in all the wrong places. He was looking for God in the created things, but that's not where the Creator was to be found. And I think that's really the heart of what goes on every time we find ourselves as the prodigal son. We become confused. We go looking for some sense of the good in this life, but we lose sight of what is truly good, and that is God and His calling on our life. And we fall into excess and selfishness and self-gratification instead of that call to self-giving love. And when we do that, we become just like that prodigal who goes on this hedonistic search for some sort of meaning and purpose that can never ever be found in those places. Our true rest and peace, as St. Augustine also says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, is only ever found back in the arms of God our Father.